So let me just start recording. All right. So sauna therapy. So it's multiple different types of saunas or heat therapies. So I mean, there's steam baths, like the Turkish baths. There's electric saunas where they use just a heating element to put out steam. There's the traditional Finnish one where they use hot rocks or hot just burn wood, and then it's usually fairly humid in there. You put water on it to steam up the room, and then there's the infrared saunas, which is the main thing that we'll chat about tonight is more the infrared saunas. So, other than it being nice to stay warm in the wintertime in St. Louis, what are some of the benefits? Well, there's a lot of data out of the Finnish literature as well as the Japanese literature on the health benefits, especially for cardiac patients. So in Japan, it's called, I'll never be able to pronounce it right, but it's Waon, W-A-O-N. That's what they call their therapy. It stands for soothing warmth. In Japan, they typically do 140 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 minutes. And they, had a trial where they did this 5 times a week over 3 weeks, and basically showed that the people who had done this, they did much better. There's less than a 50% decrease in their hospitalizations and even deaths. So how does it actually work? Well, the heat actually stimulates the endothelial cells, the endothelium, or the inner lining of your blood vessels. That inner lining releases nitric oxide, dilates your blood vessels. So this is the reason why sauna therapy, when you get heated up, your vessels are dilating to bring up the blood to the surface, to radiate out that heat back to the environment. So you're trying to dump off the heat that's coming into you. That basically stimulates the inner lining of the endothelium to be releasing nitric oxide to do that. So this will help lower your blood pressure over time, and it somewhat stimulates exercise as you're raising up your heart rate because of the temperature. It increases your cardiac output, heart rate times your stroke volume, the amount of blood that's in your heart, the cardiac output goes up. So people who have weakened hearts tends to improve the flow through their circuit. There's other data in Japan that it increases exercise capacity. They did 6-minute walk test in patients. That's a fairly standard test for heart failure patients. How far can they walk in 6 minutes? And there's significant increase with that. There's some data that it does help with weight loss and may help with mental capacity, probably due to the increased blood flow to the brain, which may decrease dementia in some of the trials. Saunas are very good at lowering inflammation. That's one of their main benefits. Yes, you can sweat out heavy metals or toxins that your body's been exposed to. That's one of the benefits of sauna therapy, is sweating out any heavy metals you've been exposed to, or the plastics, especially like the BPA that's in some of the water bottles and canned foods. Heat is one of the best ways to get it out of the system. And then, how to actually go about doing it. What is the temperature? It sort of depends on what your goals are. But if you're untrained, maybe you're only going to do 10 minutes every other day for a while. Once you're more trained, you might be able to do 40 minutes every day. The infrared saunas typically run lower in temperature than the Finnish saunas. The infrared saunas typically are going to be in the 100 to 130 degree Fahrenheit range. The Finnish saunas, maybe 160, 170. And it's not the case that, the higher the heat, the better it is. And mostly it's just that the heat penetrates into the cells and the different wavelengths of light do what they need to do. And also that if you start sweating. So many people who first start, getting into saunas, they're not going to sweat initially until their body gets used to that heat. And you can start really kind of dumping out some of that toxins. But, if you, sweat profusely, then you definitely don't need to jack it up to 160 degrees. When you're sweating, that's, you're getting the main benefit. People should be pre-hydrating before they get in the sauna. You don't want to do this if you're, extremely dehydrated. This isn't something where you're trying to lose weight by doing this. So hydrate up with at least 8 ounces of water before you get in a sauna, and ideally maybe up to 24 ounces of water after getting out of the sauna. Sometimes you get questions about, the differences of the different types of infrared. I'm not an expert in this part, but, infrared is just a different wavelength of light, just light that you can't see, but you can feel. So this is the heat that you feel from the sun. So there's different parameters that measure the different types of infrared wavelengths, but one of them, there's infrared A, infrared B, infrared C. They basically correlate with near, mid, and far infrared. The further the infrared, the longer the wavelength. So the infrared A is typically 700 to 1400 millimeters. It can penetrate the least amount into the skin. Infrared B is 1400 to 3000 nanometers. And then infrared C, the far infrared, is going to be 3000 nanometers all the way up to 1 millimeter. So the stuff that is more near is mostly heating up the skin, and this substance is right below it, so the blood vessels come up to the surface. You kind of had that magic 800 and usually 880-ish nanometers, 830 nanometers. Those help really stimulate the water inside the mitochondria. Mitochondria are the organelles in your body that make energy. So for people who've seen my previous red light lecture, this is just something that also augments the energy production in the mitochondria. The mid and the far infrared, they don't necessarily work so much in the mitochondrial level, but they do penetrate deeper into the muscles and does help stimulate the sweating response. So they're more detoxifying and just muscle inflammation lowering is kind of the way I look at them. But all of them are beneficial. You know, I'm not an expert in all the manufacturers of the infrared saunas. I personally have a Sunlight and Impulse 3-person sauna that has all near, mid, and far. It actually has a chromotherapy device on the top 2 lights that have different colors of light. I usually leave it on red. You know, it does have a Android screen in there. You know me and my blue blocking, so I don't wear glasses in the sauna, so I actually got some yellow film from lowbluelights.com and just put it over the screen, so cut down on the blue light that's coming out of the device if you're going to be watching Netflix or Amazon Prime inside the sauna. You know, one thing to look at if you're interested in getting a sauna at home is a couple things. One is it needs to usually have a 220 line, so you're going to have to probably have an electrician come out to wire a place for you to put this thing. And then you have to look at the different manufacturers, their claims on the EMFs that come off of these things, the electromagnetic frequencies. So you basically want to get the health benefits out of a sauna. You don't want to go into something that's like a microwave that's going to dehydrate your cells. So Sunlight tends to make a good brand and has low reported EMFs, and I have different EMF meters and I've tested it, and using it appropriately, it's extremely low EMF. So I don't have any problem getting in it. In the wintertime, it's pretty much a daily thing. I'm in it. I was in it this morning right after a workout. So even in the summertime, I'll use it just to augment the cardiac output and help with this muscle recovery. So those are the kind of the quick and dirty of my benefits of using sauna therapy, or WAN therapy, as the Japanese call it, for cardiac health benefits. And then I'll pause it here and let you guys ask any questions that you have. All right. I got the chat box open, and I initially muted everybody, but if you would like to unmute yourself, just click on mute and go ahead and ask your question. We're also live on Instagram, so.
Yes, Dr. Twyman. I had a question about someone that has stents, and I was just curious. One cardiologist said no, and my husband shouldn't, but then I just wondered if there's any complications with somebody that has stents or contraindications.
If it's just a cardiac stent, as long as it's not immediately after a heart attack, no, there shouldn't be any issues long term. The data in the Japanese literature was done with patients who had cardiomyopathies. They had weakened hearts for multiple reasons, and usually the reason is ischemic. But it's one of those things that you got to listen to your own body, and everybody has a different response to heat. So that's why you start very slow and work your way up. But just a stent, that's not a reason not to be able to do a sauna. A good question is, if somebody has a pacemaker or defibrillator, can they do it? The answer is, in most manufacturers, the saunas are going to say, ask your doctor. If you actually go to the websites of the major people who make the pacemakers and defibrillators, Medtronic, Biotronic, most of them say that there's not any concern with the heat component of it, but there may be an issue that if there are certain magnets inside of the sauna that's holding the sauna together, you would not want to be very in close proximity to that. Like you wouldn't want to be in close proximity to any strong magnet if you had a pacemaker defibrillator because it can interact with the programming of the device. But if you have a pacemaker defibrillator, you need to speak to your actual treating doctor to make sure they're okay with it. Most of the time they should be, as long as they're aware of what you're wanting to do with it.
Thank you.
Dr. Twyman?
Yes.
Hi, I was just calling on behalf of my dad. I think we're going to try and start him in a sauna.
Okay.
And I was a little late to the video conference, but you're saying that it would be okay for him to consider like a low heat, short period of time?
For the most part, yes. I mean, people who are not used to it, maybe 5 to 10 minutes at the lowest setting, and just see how they respond, and just try to hydrate up a little bit before you get into the sauna.
Okay, so those are basic recommendations: low heat, short period of time, hydrate.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
You're welcome. And I got a question on Instagram. Can you get dehydrated in a sauna? You can get dehydrated. That's why you want to probably have at least 8 ounces of water beforehand and maybe up to 24 ounces after. There's some data maybe you should have some type of electrolytes with it as well. If you do that, I'd avoid the sugar sweetened ones, the Gatorades, Powerades, maybe just do the new ones, the ones that are just electrolytes without the sugar. Question coming in. Do you think there might be some risk in using an infrared sauna at a spa once the facility opens? Likewise, I've also used a salt room in the past. Any risk? I have a personal sauna at home though. It's a great question. I would always recommend if you have access to something that fewer people use, especially if a home unit, that's going to be the least risky thing to use. But check with any type of office or spa that's going to be offering these services, and just ask them what their policies are. Are they going to limit to just one person at a time? What is their cleaning protocols in between people using it? High heat, I don't know exactly what the temperature would be, but most viruses don't want to be around high heat, so it's less likely to be something that's going to be contaminated. As for a salt room, there are some theoretical benefits of salt rooms. They are very relaxing. There's negative ions in the air. There might be some benefits from that. I don't think there's too much risk to actually use a salt room from a cardiac standpoint. But it's one of those things that as long as you're not somebody who has like asthma or something where they'd be very sensitive to particles in the air. Question: is it okay to use a sauna if you have high blood pressure and lung disease? I'll take those kind of separately. For high blood pressure, for the most part, yes. Again, you want to be careful for the dehydration part if you're on a diuretic or water pill for your blood pressure. But no, there's significant data that long-term safe usage of sauna therapy lowers blood pressure. It does that by activating the nitric oxide being released from your blood vessels. So I'm not too concerned about people with blood pressure issues. It should actually help with blood pressure. But if you use saunas enough, your blood pressure starts getting low and you're getting woozy, dizzy, lightheaded, well then, one, make sure you're not dehydrated, but two, you might need to start coming off any prescription medications that you're on. So work with your doctors if you're on prescription blood pressure medications. As for lung disease, there is some data that may help with certain lung diseases. There should not be any major reasons a person could not use a sauna for a lung disease issue. Especially if it's an infrared sauna. I, personally would not be in high favor of people doing big steam showers. When you aerosolize all the steam, this is a topic for another night, but deuterium, heavy hydrogen water, it's floating in the air, and you basically ingest more of this deuterium through your lung surfaces that way. So it's better to do a dry heat if possible. Question: can you put an infrared light over a regular light in your spa? Is also used of an ice pack. So it depends on how the infrared light is, quote, installed. Some of the saunas have different light bulbs that you can switch out. So as long as it's kind of a heat a stable light bulb that you can put in there. You might be able to put in a UVA bulb, a black light into the sauna as well. The question about the ice, while you're in the sauna, I mean, if that's what you need to be comfortable, I think it's worthwhile. Most of the data in the Japanese is they did 15 minutes of heat and then 30 minutes of just outside cooling down, usually, with just towel wraps. Definitely in the Finnish tradition, they kind of alternate the heat and cold. Once they get too hot, they go outside, they basically roll around in the snow, cool down, and then go back in the heat and kind of cycle through that. That's kind of a more advanced technique. So not necessarily highly recommended for kind of beginners or people who are, have significant cardiac issues. More focus on the heat component to it. The cold stuff, maybe I'll do a cold thermogenesis talk, next week or the week after that. We can talk about some of the benefits of cold therapy too. But if you do cold therapy, you sometimes really would like to have a sauna nearby. All right. Got another people joining on Instagram. Welcome. So if you join in a few minutes late, I will keep this up on Instagram. I think now they're forcing us to show this on Instagram TV, so I will let it be there. But thanks for joining. All right. And while we're waiting for more questions to come in, if there's another, kind of health optimization topic you guys would like me to do a little bit more deep dive into, just shoot me a message in the chat box, and I'll put it on the calendar as one of the topics we can do one of these Monday nights.
Dr. Twyman, as far as like the kidneys, if someone has kidney issues, or if they have, some edema issues, would the sauna benefit that, or would that be detrimental?
It really sort of depends on what other context is going on. But I mean, if it's not end-stage renal disease on dialysis where you can't get rid of fluid on your own, it should not be a big issue. It's, again, really about the status of your kind of hydration, being able to get into the sauna. So people who have severe kidney disease or severe heart failure, they can't drink a lot of extra water, because then they'll, either go into heart failure or they'll just swell up because their kidneys can't get rid of the fluid. So if it's that severe, then yes, you need to actually be talking to your doctor specifically about, is the sauna okay for you? I'm talking about, for a general healthy person, or they just have very mild kidney disease, sauna by itself shouldn't be an issue.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So I have a question here, is if you're already on blood pressure and heart meds, is it safe to use a sauna when you get warm enough heat to sweat? For the most part, yes. That's kind of the whole benefit is for patients who have weak hearts. They're generally going to be on cardiovascular medicine for blood pressure or heart failure. So you need to work with your physicians that this may ultimately over time start lowering your blood pressure. So you may not need as many blood pressure medications long term. And again, if you're naive to heat therapy, you start very slow, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes every other day at the lowest settings. So in a infrared sauna, that lowest setting might only be 100 degrees. It's not so much how hot the air temperature is, it's just more how penetrative the infrared is. So you heat up from the inside. So the air doesn't have to be nearly as hot as like in a Finnish sauna. So, sweating is generally a good sign. That means it's actually working. So whatever, temperature that you start sweating, that's all the maximum you need to go up to. So if you sweat at 110 degrees, that's fine. You don't need to jack it all the way up to 150 degrees. Another question. A person uses a biomat for therapeutic infrared rays and negative ion, which is great therapy without needing the space for a larger sauna. Have I used that therapy? Also, I need your recommendation for getting glasses for blue light with computer, cell phone, so I can sleep better. Thank you. Great questions. So no, I've not personally used the biomat. I've had previous patients use it and a good friend use it. I do have some concerns about the biomat and its electromagnetic frequency profile. So it's one of those things where it's test, don't guess. So you probably need to have your own electromagnetic frequency meter and run it over the device and see how many radio frequencies are coming off it. Usually not, shouldn't be off of that. It's more going to be the magnetic fields coming off that. So how many milligauss is coming off of the mat? Now, the higher the magnetic field, it's sort of jamming the cell signal to the mitochondria. So I've not been a huge fan of the biomat because of the electromagnetic frequencies that could potentially come off of it. But it's one of those things that you have to test your own unit to know, is yours affected that way. The other question, the blue blocking glasses, great question. I typically recommend 3 different companies. One, these are the raw optics, raoptics.com. Second one I recommend is blueblocks.com, BLUBLOX.com. And the third one, their lenses are not as good now as raw optics and blue blocks, but that's true dark. I recently had done a whole video on all 3 of these manufacturers. It's on my YouTube channel, so if you just search for Michael Timon MD, I did a 8-minute video on blue blocking glasses and which ones work better for you at what time of day. Also, if you go to my main practice website, apollocardiology.com, I do have links to all 3 of these blue light blocking companies. A great question.
Have you known of anyone with autoimmune diseases that the sauna benefits?
I don't have any specific patients off the top of my mind that I can think of, clinically improved, but it definitely would have data that it should help. I mean, heat therapy activates heat shock proteins. The heat shock proteins then help other proteins fold appropriately, and helps your body cellular detoxes. Autoimmune conditions should likely benefit from heat therapy. There was one question here, is back to the other one. Did I say you can block the electromagnetic fields? No, it's not necessarily that you can block them, but you have to measure if they're coming off of the device. So if you have electromagnetic frequencies that are coming off the device and you're laying on the device, then you're basically microwaving your cells. And that's not something that you would want to do long term. Here's a question, joining late. How much does an infrared home sauna cost? The cost varies depending on what features you want and the size. You can get a individual sauna where it's basically a floor unit. It's like a bed that you can lay in. But again, those are ones you're going to be more concerned about the electromagnetic frequencies because of how close you are to the heating elements. But to get a infrared sauna that 2 people can get in, that has kind of the near, mid, and far infrared. Probably, I don't know exactly, but on the low end, it's probably going to be 4,000 or 5,000. For a 3-person one, it's probably 8,000 or 9,000, and then if you get kind of more than 3 people, you're be looking at 5 figures for a sauna like that. All right, so getting a question here, how many minutes per day and how many days per week should one use a sauna? So for a beginner, probably 10 minutes every other day at the lowest possible settings. So most saunas, start off at room temperature, that's not enough, so probably 100 degrees. So 100 degrees, 10 minutes every other day. In the Japanese literature, they eventually got the people up to 5 times a week. For over 3 weeks to do in the trial, and they were at 140 degrees. So I can only go by what the literature was showing the benefits. So, but again, it's mostly the temperature that you start sweating is the temperature that works for you. Once somebody's kind of gotten acclimated to the heat, potentially work your way up to 40 minutes every single day. Probably more people are going to use it in the wintertime when it's cold than they are going to use it when it's already 80, 90 degrees outside. But if you really want the great benefits, more days of the week than not. All right, well, and Question come off Instagram. It's just they just joined. What is recommended post sauna, cold shower? Really depends on what your personal preference is. You do not have to rush and shower off all the sweat. You're just you can just towel off and just go upon your way. Um, you know, but if you want to take a cold shower to kind of cool down afterward, that's fine. You know, um, I would not do the ice plunges or the other kind of cold water stuff unless you kind of really know what you're doing. And I said I'll do a cold thermogenesis talk another week, but um, you know, there's no particular post sauna recommendations other than to stay hydrated, maybe up to 24 ounces of water after a hot session.
I've always wondered that, Dr. Twyman, because if you're sweating out toxins, and then you just dry off, I just feel like you need to wash off what that's been sweated out of your body.
I mean, I think if you just kind of, pat it dry, I don't think there's any issues with that. I mean, you don't, I was back up. It's not a hygiene issue if you don't go jump in the shower and scrub all the way down with soap. I mean, just sweating out whatever's going to come out is natural. So just towel off and usually good to go. But if you want to get a shower, cool showers is fine.
Okay.
All right. And then let's see. Somebody's asking the question about what device do I use to measure electromagnetic fields. I have multiple devices. The one that I use just for kind of screening purposes is this one, the ENV RD10. I don't remember exactly what website I got it on. I think it's lessemf.com, but has different settings, has the RF, the magnetic and the electrical fields, but it's fairly straightforward to use. You turn it on, and if it's red, you're in a high field. If it's green, you're in a low field. This is going to be high just because I have it go over a computer. Computers give off a lot of radio frequencies just because of the Wi-Fi antenna, even though right now my device is hardwired in. If you didn't see it, I did put that in my Instagram story today, how to hardwire your computer and not use Wi-Fi. But I use this as a screening device. Then I have some more sensitive magnetic and also radio frequency devices that I'll use. I've done some short videos on those before, but probably because I've been getting a lot more questions on electromagnetic frequencies. And I recently just did essentially a podcast on 5G and potential health benefits. Again, that video is on. That one's only on my Facebook feed just because it was fairly controversial. So I didn't want that one out there fully. You can get the podcast, just the audio version, if you just search my name and Get Real to Heal. Amanda LaPlante, who is one of my colleagues and the health coach I've worked with most since starting Apollo Cardiology. She has it on her SoundCloud account for Get Real to Heal. Question. Go off Instagram first, and I'll come back to the other. Was just about to turn my new red infrared light on. I've been winging it. Any recommendations on where I can learn about best protocols? So I just last week had done a talk on red light therapy and best practices and the best dosing. So it's how close you stand to the device. It depends what device you have, is how many minutes you're going to need. So I'd recommend just go checking it out. It's on my Instagram. I'm sorry, it was on Instagram. They took it down after the Instagram live wore off, but I do have that on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is Michael Twyman, MD, and it was the 1 or 2 videos ago. It was all about red light therapy. Another question here, great, is I often take my blood pressure after having been in the sauna, sometimes followed by the steam, and definitely lowers the blood pressure. Thank you for suggesting this a year ago, especially after you learned that I had a personal sauna. Thank you again. Oh, you're very welcome. That's awesome. I'm always glad to get feedback from patients that, the recommendations I put out there that are giving them a benefit. I try to do it without pills and without procedures when I can. And heat is just one of those things that can augment your body's ability to heal itself. Question here is, do I recommend any particular binders pre-sauna? Personally, I don't. I know, some people will take certain like bile acid sequestrins and niacin to flush more. that's kind of advanced stuff that, for the average beginner, that shouldn't be adding niacin or anything like that. Um, if you have a functional medicine doctor who really, thinks you need to be on a binder for toxins, I'm okay with that. But I personally think the body is pretty wise. It can do what it needs to do on its own. Question, does it matter what time of day you use it? Not particularly, other than I would not use this like an hour before you go to bed just because it's going to heat up your core temperature a couple degrees. And one of the biggest triggers for sleep is having a dip in your temperature. So if you use it too close to bedtime, it might be harder to go to bed. Yes, the heat is relaxing, but might interfere with that. So most of the time, you're probably going to use it, um, during, you know, typically I would say, use it during daylight hours, pretend that this is the sun and you're just augmenting that. So, if you're working out, using it after a workout to um, kind of heal the muscles a little bit better because you're restoring blood flow to it more effectively is probably a good use of it, but probably just not too close to bedtime. Question, do I have a whole house blocker for EMFs or is that on the same video with 5G? Um, there's no such thing as a complete mitigation technique for 5G. It's really the unfortunate inverse square law. You basically just have to get away from it when you can. There are certain things you can do to help kind of mitigate some of the electromagnetic frequencies. And it's not just 5G that you need to be really concerned about. I mean, people are exposed to a lot of Wi-Fi signals, and just even 2G or 3G can cause some health issues. So I would say start with the 5G video. You can also follow Dr. Jack Cruz online. He has plethora of information about 5G and EMF mitigation. He ended up building essentially a health retreat down in Louisiana where he made it 5G proof. But concrete walls, has lead line drywall in the bedrooms. You know, there's no Wi-Fi in the whole place. It's all hardwired for everything. Special electricians come out and shield all the cabling. Has a metal roof to reflect any microwaves or EMFs coming from satellites. So he also built it in the middle of a forest, essentially, so all the trees knock it down. So it takes a lot of pre-planning for you to be able to really mitigate things if you want to go to the nth degree. But the biggest thing is just focus on where you sleep. That's the time that a third of your body is needing time to recover. So focus on using your monitors to monitor your bedroom and see what's going on. So keep your phones out of your bedroom, turn off your Wi-Fi at night, get your electronics out of your bedroom, and just try to keep your bedroom a low EMF environment. There's a question, where are there infrared saunas in St. Louis that I recommend? It depends with COVID-19, who's open, I don't know. Honestly, I can't remember the name of the place off my head, but there's a place off of Kirkwood and Big Bend. They had sunlight in. They also had jacuzzi infrared saunas. So actually, that's what I had done is that I'd gone there. I think a session was like $20 or $30, and tried out different saunas to find out the one I liked. And once I found out the one I liked, then I bought my own. So there's a couple places in St. Louis that do offer just sauna by the session. That's correct. Yeah. So those ones tend to have Groupons as well. So just fire up the Groupon app and just search for saunas, and one of these companies will pop up. And like I said, probably the first one's probably free if it's on Groupon, but then the other ones are probably about $20, $30 a session. And again, many health spas and gyms have saunas. Um, I would just say I would lean toward doing the infrared ones. The Fender saunas are nice, but they're going to be super hot. They're going to be like 160, 170 degrees. So that's kind of more advanced. And also, you don't necessarily need that much humidity for to get the benefit. It's actually probably less comfortable when it's that humid. Okay, here's one. Yeah, somebody on my Zoom thing has just put it in. So thank you, Arlene. So the Salty Spa, it's in Manchester. It's on Manchester and Ellisville. They have infrared And she also says Club Fitness has some of the saunas as well. Another one is coming in, Holistic Fitness in Shrewsbury has them. Thank you, guys. It's always great seeing people help each other. And for those that aren't already in it, I do have that private Facebook group. Just that's Dr. Twyman's Tribe, Heart Attack Proof. If you're not on Facebook, that's okay. But if you're on Facebook, it's free to join this group. And patients usually see me pop in at least once a day. I'll throw in an article or throw in a video with some of my comments. That's usually where I kind of keep most of my updates daily. Is mostly in that Facebook group. Also on Instagram. Instagram has more of my kind of biohacks or health optimization tips. I usually put more videos up on Instagram, so follow me on both locations. On Instagram, I'm at Dr. Twyman. A great questions going on tonight. I guess the sauna was a popular topic to pick. So, does anybody have any topics that, other than, like I said, I'll do a cold thermogenesis one at some point, and then I'll do another kind of more detailed one, how to use these meters and what electromagnetic frequencies can do to your health as well. But does anybody else have any topics that they're dying for me to hit upon? All right. While waiting for that, I just got a good comment on my Instagram one. This person had bought a clear light sauna 5 years ago after a family member had some health crises. It paid off itself over and over. I highly recommend owning one. It's one of those things that, yes, it's an expense, but it's a investment in your health. And that's, basically my saying ever since I started Polycardiology is, invest in your health. It's the only asset that truly matters, especially during these times of stay-at-home mandates. It's been nice to have a sauna at home. I don't need to go anywhere to do all my biohacking, health optimization. I can kind of use all my own gear. So yes, these things are not, they're not free, but they're not, overly expensive if you invest in it for the long-term use. So yes, I mean, this person, said, they've been using it for 5 years, you get the cost per use down to a couple dollars. And, if you're staying out of the hospital, you're getting off prescription medications, possibly, it ultimately will pay for itself. Question, I do not have the meters themselves on my website, but I'll just put this up here. This is the current meter I'm using, the ENV RD10. You can get it at a couple different places. Amazon should have it, but I think lessemf.com is the place I got this one from. Okay, so got a comment here. Rocky Mountain Sauna Infrared tried it at Webster Family Physicians. They liked it so much they ordered their own two-person for $3,000. So that seems about kind of the, a good price point for a decent two-person one. You're probably going to spend at least $3,000 or more for them. But again, you're using a couple times a week over a couple of years. You amortize it out. It's going to be a couple dollars per use. Question, besides cardiology, do I work with Lyme's, inflammation, autoimmune? Let's just say I'm not necessarily a Lyme expert. I have colleagues in town that if Lyme is truly the diagnosis that you carry, that I can refer you out to. But many times Lyme is essentially an issue with your mitochondria, the mitochondria that make energy for you. Your mitochondria are in your brain, heart, musculoskeletal, and your immune system. Your mitochondria break, you're more prone to getting Lyme disease. Lyme disease is very sensitive to electromagnetic frequencies. So you got to kind of really work on your EMF exposure if you have Lyme. As for the inflammation autoimmune, yes, that's definitely in my wheelhouse. That's what I do day in, day out and check with my advanced lipid panels. Have 5, 6 different inflammatory markers. A couple of years ago, one of my patients actually approached me to help her reverse some of her cardiovascular issues. She had an autoimmune condition that she ended up reversing with her lifestyle changes. Some of you heard of her story and seen the documentary I was in with her. The documentary is Uninflame Me. It's on Amazon Prime. I thought she was only going to get on PBS, so I didn't really think anybody other than like my immediate family was ever going to see it, but it's on Amazon Prime if you're really wanting to to kind of see where my thinking was a couple years ago. Definitely had a different hairstyle at that point. Did not know anything about this blue light blocking stuff or any of this biohacking at that point. My answers are still probably 80% good, and give you the kind of the basics of what you need to do to lower inflammation, which ultimately would help with people's autoimmunity. So sometimes I may not necessarily treat their autoimmunity directly, other than I really dig deep into what's causing the inflammation, and then can kind of put them on a circadian rhythm reset protocol, and then try to really improve it. And then if they need help with another doctor for a chronic infection that is probably the potential cause, then I'll put them into the right path for that. Question here. This is not my wheelhouse, but I can talk about a little bit about the thyroid. Question is, can I talk about thyroid health and its relationship to EBV, which is a chronic Epstein-Barr virus, the mono disease? Honestly, I don't know the correlation between those two, but thyroid health is very important for heart health. If your thyroid is underactive, heart disease is much more common. You have an underactive thyroid, your cholesterol is going to be dysfunctional. It's going to be very abnormal, probably high. And it's not high cholesterol that's the problem, is that it's high cholesterol with inflammation causes cholesterol to get damaged, then the damaged cholesterol starts getting stuck into your arteries. So I routinely screen for a full thyroid panel to make sure it's optimized, because the thyroid also just talks about what's going on in your environment. If your thyroid's shot, you got to look at what's going on electromagnetic frequencies, what your diet is, how well your sleep is. So definitely take a deep dive into looking at thyroid health. Question here is about how to increase heart rate variability. Great question. First off, it's one of those test don't guess. You need to monitor your heart rate variability. So I personally use an app called Elite HRV. They do have a free version of the app, but you need to have a compatible monitor that goes with it. Polar makes a chest strap. I have the Polar H7. Now they've upgraded to a different device called the Polar H10. There's also a Core Sense is the company, Elite HRV makes one. And then I use something called the Zoom HRV watch. So I personally don't wear any electronics on myself other than for that 3-minute screen in the morning time. So I measure my HRV in the morning time. Your heart rate variability is that beat to beat difference between heartbeats. The wider it is, the better your heart conditioning is. Really tight HRV tends to mean that your body's under a lot of stress. Your sympathetic tone is very high. Your fight or flight response is high. So deep breathing exercises, meditation, yoga are kind of the top things that I recommend for that. This person said that they use the Oura Ring. I could never talk about the Oura Ring. The Oura Ring doesn't interact with these HRV apps because it's a closed system with Oura. And Oura does give you heart rate variability, especially your nighttime HRV is a useful finding. And I've talked about the Oura Ring before in some of my sleep talks. The Oura Ring is probably still the best sleep tracker there is, but it's one of those things that definitely use it in airplane mode only. And then also, once you start figuring out what's going on with your sleep, what's breaking it, you're eating too late, you're drinking alcohol, you're drinking caffeine too late, you're exercising too late, you're using your sauna too late, then what's kind of breaking your sleep. You don't necessarily need to use the Oura Ring every single night. There are some potential health negativities to using the Oura Ring long term because of the electromagnetic frequencies coming off the Oura Ring. Even if they're small, your body can still sense it. So I personally don't use my Oura Ring anymore unless I wanted to do kind of a different experiment on myself to see how it's going to affect things. But I used the Oura Ring for about 2-3 years. I had boatloads of data. So at this point, it doesn't really add to my sleep quality. I have a question here. Yeah, I did not mention it. That's a bigger point. Other ways you can improve your HRV is using the Inner Balance app. Company HeartMath makes the Inner Balance app. Again, it's like I'm pitching my YouTube channel. I do have a video on heart rate variability on my channel, but the HeartMath device clips to your ear, plugs into your phone, and it has different breathing exercises. It's measuring the heart rate variability. And so you're getting instant biofeedback if you're kind of lowering that sympathetic tone and bringing up that parasympathetic tone. But the Inner Balance device is about $120. It's a one-time purchase. And then That one has significant data on helping with people's anxiety, helps with sleep, may help with blood pressure. So it's my favorite you know, app and device for people to use. Like I'm not, you know, and I sometimes feel like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. I was much, on the side of technology before I realized a lot of how the technology can affect your health. So use the tech as needed, get the measurements you need, and then just disconnect from it and get back in nature. That's the key. But outstanding questions tonight. Thank you, guys. All right. Well, I do want to be respectful of everybody's time. I will answer any questions if they do pop in here, but I'll start letting you guys go tonight. Thank you for joining me. We're going to be doing this again next Monday, 6 o'clock. Topic to be determined, but I think the prelim topic is probably going to be cold therapy, how to use that appropriately. Again, this is a little bit more advanced topic. I'll tell you the safe ways to do it, even if you're a complete beginner. If you're more advanced, I'll teach you the more advanced things at another time. Um, you know, and then for those that get my daily, I don't actually make it daily. I'm not that well versed yet to write a daily email, but I usually send out an email once or twice a week to my email group. You get on the email group either by just signing up on my website, or if you're one of my patients, your email address gets dropped into the email responder from my medical practice. Or I'd seen you at my previous practices, I had some of your email addresses. I usually send out updates once or twice a week and some copies of the videos I've done that week or podcasts I've done that week or one I've listened to that isn't me, but give you my comments on it. So if you're interested in getting on my email list, there's a sign up on my website, apollocardiology.com. This upcoming Friday, I'm going to be doing a webinar at noon. Going to be talking about how to optimize your health with my upcoming VIP membership program. I'll tell you all about the kind of ideas I have on what I can do to really help hold you accountable to your health goals and really help you optimize your longevity. For some of you who've followed me for a while, I've had a great grandmother make it to 106 years old. I call it Mission 106 Plus because I want to try to beat her record, doing all the preventive cardiology stuff I know how to do, and then also all the new biohacking and health optimization stuff I've learned over the past 3 years, which I love teaching you guys how to do. So I'm going to be giving a free webinar Friday at noon that goes over that topic. If you're interested in that, just send me a message and I'll send you the link. It's on Eventbrite. I do want patients to register for that because there is some questions I want to be able to answer for people at that one. Let's see. A couple of last questions. Did I discuss HRV talk? What range should I be for age range? It really depends on obviously what your age range is, but I don't go specifically into the different ranges. But again, the higher the heart rate variability, the better it is, and it's going to be individualized to yourself. So, like I said, I personally use the Elite HRV app. I get my HRV every morning. I know what it is. It's usually in the 60s. And that's their algorithm. There's different measurements of heart rate variability. There's the square root of the RR intervals mean. There's the logarithmic of that same number. There's a percentage of them that are over 50 milliseconds. So there's multiple numbers that are quote heart rate variability. So it really depends on which one you're looking at. But many of the apps kind of congregate all these numbers into a score. So you really just want to know, is your score improving or not? And then I have a question here. Do I offer chelation in my office? I do not offer chelation. I'm not been trained in it, but there is data on certain patients may benefit from chelation. At least from the cardiovascular world, there was a trial called the TACT trial, TACT, that had actually shown that IV chelation was beneficial for certain cardiac patients, mainly diabetic patients. Thus, they're doing the TACT-2 trial to look at what the other benefits will be for the diabetic patients. Patients who are not diabetic tended not to benefit as much. And the oral chelators really weren't shown in other trials to benefit that much. They may work, but there's just not as much data behind it. So, saunas are outstanding for detoxification, especially of heavy metals. So I'd start with a sauna therapy before I start really going down the oral or IV chelation route. But Great session tonight, guys. Thank you. These are some outstanding questions and some really good ideas of what I can do to kind of help promoting your guys' health. And if you need anything in the interim, just get a hold of myself. I'm on all the social media channels, even TikTok. If you know what TikTok is, you'll be able to find me there. But hope you guys have a great night, and we'll see you again next week. Take care.